My beloved child, go somewhere quiet, close the door behind you, turn down the noise around you, place your phone where no one else can see the screen, and listen carefully, because this message is not meant for curious eyes, careless ears, or people who have never understood what your heart has been carrying. This message is personal. Something has been building beneath the silence between you and your soulmate, and tonight it has reached a point where it can no longer remain hidden. Do not skip ahead. The most important part will not make sense unless you understand what happened first. For a long time, you have probably felt that something about this connection remained unfinished. Even when you tried to move forward, even when you filled your days with responsibilities, conversations, distractions, and plans, a quiet part of you continued to sense that the final truth had never been spoken. There were words your soulmate almost said. There were messages they wrote and deleted. There were moments when they stood one decision away from reaching you. But fear pulled them backward, before courage could take control. From the outside, their silence may have looked like indifference. It may have appeared that they had forgotten you, replaced you, or simply chosen a life in which your presence no longer mattered. But behind closed doors, the truth has looked very different. Your soulmate has not been living peacefully with the decision to remain silent. They have been carrying your memory into places where no one knows your name. They have smiled while thinking about what they lost. They have joined conversations while hearing your voice in the back of their mind. They have tried to convince themselves that time would weaken the connection, but time has only removed the distractions that once helped them avoid it. The more they tried to forget you, the more clearly they remembered the smallest details. The way you listened when they spoke. The way you noticed when something was wrong before they admitted it. The way your energy made them feel seen without forcing them to explain every hidden wound. Those memories did not disappear. They became sharper. And something happened very recently that made those memories impossible to ignore. Your soulmate found themselves in a room surrounded by people, yet emotionally, they felt completely alone. Someone was speaking to them about the future, about plans, expectations, responsibilities, and the kind of life they were supposed to build. Everyone around them appeared certain. Everyone seemed to know what your soulmate should choose. But, while those voices filled the room, your soulmate realized something terrifying. None of those people knew what was happening inside their heart. They knew the version your soulmate performed. They knew the obedient version, the responsible version, the version that avoided conflict and accepted expectations, because disappointing people felt unbearable. But they did not know the person your soulmate became when they were with you. They did not know how free your soulmate felt in your presence. They did not know how deeply your words had entered places that had remained untouched for years. And they certainly did not know that every plan being discussed felt empty because you were not included in it. That realization created a silence inside your soulmate, louder than every voice in the room. They looked around and understood that they had allowed other people to speak over their heart for far too long. They had allowed fear to become a decision maker. They had allowed pride to become protection. They had allowed silence to become a wall between the two of you. And tonight, that wall is beginning to crack. This is why you were asked to close the door. Not because something frightening is waiting for you. Not because you must hide from the world, but because the truth your soulmate wants to reveal may awaken emotions you have worked very hard to control. You may feel anger, You may feel relief. You may feel the return of hope you thought you had buried. You may also feel the need to protect yourself, and that feeling is valid. Do not allow this message to pressure you into abandoning the wisdom you gained during the separation. Love should never require you to ignore reality. But before you decide what this connection means now, you deserve to understand what was happening when everything went silent. Your soulmate did not pull away because you meant too little. They pulled away because the connection began to mean more than they felt prepared to handle. You reached a part of them that had survived by remaining hidden. Before you, they could control how deeply people knew them. They could choose what to reveal, what to conceal, and what version of themselves to present in each room. But you saw beyond that performance. You noticed the sadness beneath their confidence. You felt the fear beneath their distance. You recognized the softness beneath the walls they used to appear strong. Being seen that clearly should have felt like safety. Instead, it frightened them, because being truly seen means being truly vulnerable, and vulnerability means another person holds the power to hurt places no one else has ever reached. Your soulmate believed distance would restore their control. They thought stepping away would calm the intensity. They told themselves that if they remained silent long enough, the feelings would weaken, and life would become manageable again. But that is not what happened. Your absence did not calm them. It exposed them. Without you, they became more aware of the emptiness they had been carrying long before you entered their life. You had not created that emptiness. Your presence had simply shown them what life felt like without it. That is why nothing felt the same after you. Other conversations became shallow. Other connections felt incomplete. Other people may have offered attention. But attention is not the same as understanding. They may have been surrounded by people and still felt the particular loneliness that comes from missing the one person who recognized their silence as a language. Do not skip this next part, because this is where the urgency begins. Your soulmate recently learned that you may be preparing to close this chapter permanently. Someone told them that you were done waiting. Someone suggested that your heart had finally moved beyond the connection. Perhaps they said you were speaking to someone new. Perhaps they claimed you no longer cared. Perhaps they insisted that any message sent now would arrive too late. Your soulmate tried to appear calm when they heard it. They nodded. They acted as if the news did not affect them, but inside, something collapsed. For the first time, losing you was no longer an abstract fear. It became a real possibility. They imagined you building a life in which their name no longer carried emotional weight. They imagined someone else receiving the honesty, tenderness, and loyalty they had been too frightened to accept. They imagined you looking at another person with the warmth that once made them feel safe. And suddenly, every excuse they had used to justify their silence became painfully small. They realized they had spent so much time protecting themselves from rejection that they had created the very loss they feared. They had waited for the perfect moment, but perfect moments do not arrive for people who continue hiding. Courage creates the moment. And your soulmate is finally approaching that truth. But there is more. The information about you did not come from a neutral source. The person who delivered it appeared unusually certain. They spoke as if they wanted your soulmate to believe the door was already closed. They discouraged them from contacting you. They suggested that reaching out would only embarrass them. They may have even said, "Leave them alone. They are better without you." Those words sounded protective. But something beneath them felt wrong. Your soulmate began questioning why this person cared so much about keeping the two of you apart. Why were they so interested in your decisions? Why did they seem almost relieved by the idea that you had moved on? Why were they speaking on your behalf, when they had no right to represent your heart? That conversation planted a question your soulmate could not ignore. What if the story they had been told about you was incomplete? What if someone had been using the silence between you to control what each of you believed? What if you had also received information designed to convince you that your soulmate no longer cared? Suddenly, past moments began looking different. A message that never reached you. A conversation interrupted at the wrong time. A rumor that appeared without evidence. A misunderstanding that grew faster than either of you could explain it. Your soulmate began to wonder whether the distance was created entirely by fear, or whether someone had quietly helped the fear become stronger. This does not remove your soulmate's responsibility. They should have spoken directly. They should have asked you instead of believing other voices. They should have protected the connection with honesty, rather than assuming silence was safer. But tonight, they are beginning to understand that someone may have benefited from their hesitation. And that person may still be influencing the situation now. This is why the message had to reach you privately. Your soulmate wants you to stop for a moment before making any permanent decision. They are not asking you to wait forever. They are not asking you to trust words without evidence. They are asking you to hear the full truth before someone else decides the ending for both of you. Because the next thing they discovered was not just about a rumor, it was about a private conversation involving your name, your future, and a plan someone believed you would never learn about. Your soulmate heard enough to realize that the silence between you may not have been as accidental as it appeared. And in the next part, you will understand why they are terrified that someone close to the situation has been hiding something from you. Keep the door closed, stay alone for a little longer, because the person involved may be someone you trusted. Part 2. Someone has been speaking for you. There is a particular kind of betrayal that does not begin with an obvious lie. It begins with someone speaking for you. They describe what you feel, without asking. They explain what you want without listening. They repeat fragments of your words, remove the context, and create a version of your heart that serves their own purpose. That is what your soulmate believes may have happened. After hearing that you were supposedly done with the connection, they did not immediately react. A part of them wanted to accept the information, because accepting it would allow them to remain hidden. If the door was already closed, they would not need to risk rejection. They would not need to confess. They would not need to explain why they waited. They could tell themselves that silence was now the respectful choice. But something inside them refused to accept the story. The details did not fit. The person speaking about you knew too much in certain areas and too little in others. They spoke with confidence, but could not explain where the information came from. They described your decision as final. Yet, everything they said sounded strangely rehearsed. Your soulmate began asking careful questions. When did they this? Who were they speaking to? What exactly did they say? The answers changed, small details shifted. The certainty began weakening. And then your soulmate heard a sentence that exposed more than the speaker intended. They said, once they believe you have chosen someone else, they will finally stop waiting. Not if you have chosen someone else, once they believe it, that one word changed everything. Believe. Your soul realized. The person was not describing a truth. They were describing an outcome they wanted to create. Suddenly, your soulmate understood that someone may have been planning to make you believe a decision had already been made. Perhaps you were told your soulmate was committed elsewhere. Perhaps someone suggested they had returned to a former relationship. Perhaps a family member, friend, or shared connection implied that your name was never mentioned, that your soulmate had forgotten you, or that the entire bond existed only in your imagination. The purpose was not simply to hurt you. The purpose was to make you leave quietly. If you closed the door on your own, your soulmate could be guided back toward the future other people preferred for them. No confrontation would be necessary. No one would need to openly admit they opposed the connection. They could simply allow misunderstanding to perform the separation for them. Do not misunderstand this message. It is not asking you to become suspicious of everyone. It is not telling you to accuse people without evidence. Fear can create stories just as easily as manipulation can. So remain grounded. Look at patterns, ask direct questions, separate what you know from what you have only been told. Your soulmate is learning this lesson too. For too long, they accepted other people's interpretations because direct truth required courage. If someone said you had moved on, they believed it. If someone suggested you were angry, they withdrew further. If someone told them that contacting you would create problems, they used that advice as permission to remain silent. They did not understand that every time they allowed another person to explain your heart, they abandoned the responsibility of asking you directly. Now, they do, and the shame of that realization has become difficult to carry. Your soulmate has been replaying the moments when they should have trusted the connection more than the noise around it. They remember the last time you tried to express what the silence was doing to you. Perhaps you said, "Just tell me the truth." Perhaps you asked, "Do I matter to you?" Perhaps you gave them one final opportunity to speak clearly. They wanted to answer. The words existed inside them. But the moment became too real. They felt the weight of expectations, fear, family pressure, old wounds, and the possibility of disappointing everyone. So, instead of telling you the truth, they gave you uncertainty. Maybe they said they needed time. Maybe they changed the subject. Maybe they disappeared. Maybe they offered a vague answer that protected them, while leaving you with nothing solid to hold. They now understand that ambiguity can wound more deeply than a painful truth. A clear answer allows healing to begin. Ambiguity keeps the heart suspended. You remained between hope and grief, unable to fully move forward and unable to trust that waiting had meaning. Your soulmate may not have intended to trap you there. But intention does not erase impact. They see that now, and this is why the message they want to send cannot be another collection of beautiful words. They know you need facts. You need accountability. You need to understand not only what they felt, but what they are prepared to do differently. Do not skip this next revelation. The person who spoke for you may not be acting only from dislike. They may be acting from fear. Your connection changed your soulmate. Before you entered their life, they may have been easier to predict. They followed familiar patterns. They accepted expectations. They remained loyal to systems that offered approval in exchange for obedience. Then you appeared. You did not force them to rebel. You did something more powerful. You reminded them they had a choice. With you, your soulmate began imagining a different future, They started asking questions they had never allowed themselves to ask. What if love did not need permission? What if loyalty to family did not require abandoning personal truth? What if being a good person did not mean sacrificing every desire to keep others comfortable? What if the life designed for them was not the life they were meant to live? These questions threatened people who benefited from the old version of your soulmate. When someone begins awakening to their own voice, the people accustomed to controlling that voice may describe the awakening as disrespect. They may say the person has changed. They may blame the new relationship. They may suggest that love has made them selfish, confused, or disloyal. But sometimes what they call disobedience is simply self-respect arriving late. Your soulmate's growing independence may have frightened someone close to them. That person traced the change back to you. In their mind, removing you would restore the previous order. They believed that without your influence, your soulmate would return to the version who said yes to everything, avoided conflict, and lived according to other people's plans. That is why your name became a problem. Not because you were unworthy. Not because you had done something unforgivable. But because the connection represented freedom, and freedom is threatening to anyone who confuses love with control. Your soulmate finally saw this during the conversation. The person speaking about you did not sound concerned about your soulmate's happiness. They sounded concerned about losing authority. They said things like, "You are becoming someone we do not recognize. You never questioned us before. This relationship has changed you. You are throwing away everything for someone who may not even want you." Each sentence was designed to awaken guilt. But for the first time, your soulmate heard the truth beneath the accusation. Yes. They were changing. They were becoming someone capable of examining their own life. Yes, they were questioning, because unquestioned obedience had led them into a future that looked acceptable from the outside, but felt empty within. And yes, the relationship affected them. Real love often reveals where a person has been living dishonestly. That does not mean every powerful connection is automatically healthy or destined to last. Strong feelings must still be tested through maturity, compatibility, responsibility, and consistent action. Your soulmate knows that emotion alone is not enough. But they also know the connection should never have been buried beneath other people's fear. The conversation became more intense. Someone mentioned a plan already being prepared for your soulmate's future, a commitment, an arrangement, a move, a decision involving another person. Your soulmate realized that while they had been hesitating, other people had continued building a life around them, without truly asking what they wanted. They were expected to agree eventually. They were expected to become tired of resisting. They were expected to forget you. But they had not forgotten. When your name was mentioned again, your soulmate did something they had never done so openly before. They defended you. Not vaguely, not through silence. They said clearly that you were not responsible for the conflict. They admitted that the connection mattered. They said the distance did not mean the feelings disappeared. And then they said something that changed the atmosphere completely. "I was silent because I was afraid. Do not use my fear to blame them." Those words shocked everyone. Your soulmate had finally separated your actions from their own choices. They stopped allowing others to make you responsible for their hesitation. That moment was not a complete transformation. One statement cannot erase months of silence. But it was a beginning. It was the first time they chose truth while facing the people whose disappointment they feared most. Afterward, they went somewhere private. Their hands were shaking, their heart was racing. They felt guilt, relief, grief, and courage all at once. They opened your conversation again. They looked at the last message between you. They may have read words that once seemed simple but now carried enormous weight. Perhaps your final message was kind. Perhaps it was angry. Perhaps it contained no dramatic ending at all. Only exhaustion. Your soulmate understood that you had reached a point where protecting yourself became necessary. They could not blame you. They had given you no reason to keep trusting their return. But they also realized something else. If someone had been shaping what you believed, then your decision may have been made, without access to the full truth. You deserved that truth, even if hearing it did not lead to reunion. You deserved to know that the silence was not indifference. You deserved to know that the rumors about another commitment may not reflect your soulmate's choice. You deserved to know that your name had been defended. You deserved to know that someone had been trying to speak for you. Most importantly, you deserved the freedom to decide for yourself. That is the heart of this message. Your soulmate is not asking to own your decision. They are asking to stop other people from owning it. But there is one more hidden layer. The person who tried to separate the connection may have access to something private. An old message, a photograph, a conversation, or a detail that could be presented without context. Your soulmate believes this information may soon reach you. It could be used to convince you that everything they say now is false. It could make the situation appear worse than it is. And the next part will reveal what that hidden evidence may actually mean. Why your soulmate is afraid you will see it before hearing their explanation. And what they are preparing to confess before anyone else reaches you. Stay alone. Do not open the door yet. Because what appears to be proof may only be half of the truth. Part 3. The thing they are afraid you will see. There is a reason your soulmate feels the message must reach you before anything else does. Someone may possess an image, message, recording, or piece of information connected to them. Out of context, it may appear to confirm your worst fear. It may look as though your soulmate chose another person. It may appear that they spoke about you carelessly. It may suggest that while you were carrying the pain of the separation, they were living without concern. Your soulmate is afraid that once you see it, you will close your heart before asking what actually happened. But listen carefully. This message is not asking you to ignore evidence. It is not asking you to accept an excuse simply because the emotional story sounds beautiful. Evidence matters. Truth must withstand questions. Your soulmate knows this. That is why they are preparing to explain the full context. Even though doing so may expose choices they are ashamed of. They do not want to arrive as an innocent person, blaming everyone else. They made mistakes. They allowed pressure to influence them. They may have attended an event they did not want to attend. They may have stood beside someone for a photograph. They may have answered a message politely, because conflict felt dangerous. They may have remained present in a situation that looked like agreement. Even while their heart resisted it. From the outside, those moments may appear like betrayal. And perhaps some of them were. Fear does not erase responsibility. Being pressured does not automatically remove accountability. Your soulmate understands that if their behavior hurt you, they must acknowledge the hurt, before explaining the circumstances. This is what they are afraid to confess. During the period of silence, someone close to them pushed another connection into their life. It may have been a former partner, a family-approved person, or someone presented as a better choice. Your soulmate did not feel what others expected them to feel. But they did not reject the situation clearly enough. They remained uncertain. They went along with conversations. They allowed appearances to form. They believed that if they stayed emotionally detached, no real harm was being done, but appearances have consequences. Silence has consequences, and you may soon see something that makes those consequences real. Your soulmate wants to say, "Yes, I was there, yes, the image or message is real, but the meaning you are being given is not the full truth." They want to explain that the moment represented pressure, fear, and their failure to establish boundaries. Not a peaceful decision to replace you. That distinction matters, but it does not automatically heal the wound. You are still allowed to feel hurt. You are still allowed to ask why they did not choose honesty sooner. You are still allowed to decide that the explanation is not enough. Your soulmate's confession must offer clarity, not demand forgiveness. Do not skip the next part, because this is where their deepest fear is revealed. They are not only afraid that you will believe the image, they are afraid that you will see it and recognize a pattern. They have not fully changed. They know they have spent much of their life surrendering to pressure. When conflict appears, they freeze. When people become disappointed, they question themselves. When love requires public courage, they retreat into private feelings. They can love deeply in silence and still fail to protect that love through action. That is the pattern they must break. Your soulmate has finally understood that private love is not enough. Missing you is not enough. Thinking about you every night is not enough.